Alright, thought I would try my hand at streaming a flight simulator tutorial I recently finished. Well, it didn't finish, there's still a lot to go. Made some good progress on my home simulator here. I've seen a lot of really bad, questionable videos out there of like people firewalling turbo aircrafts and stuff, and I think part of the fun of the simulator is simulating flight as accurately as possible. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. I'm going to do a cold startup and takeoff in a 172. I'm going to use the G1000 version because that's how my setup is kind of configured. So to just to give some more background, what we're going to do here is going to be starting the engine and taking off to what I would call a commercial standard. So doing things that would be safe in real life and non-damaging to the engine in real life. Couple things if you want to make your experience more realistic. There's plenty of checklists and knee boards out there. You can get them out from Amazon or Sporties. They're like $20, and having a checklist available, ups the real factor too. I know a lot of people are getting into VR now, but I don't like that because I personally think touching and manipulating the controls is much more realistic for me personally. But anyway, here we go. Cold startup in a 172 with a G1000. Okay, so assuming you've done the pre-flight, I'm going to be using the X-Plane 172 with the reality expansion pack. It's one of the best physics models in any simulator out there. Okay, so assuming you've done the walk around, we're going to start from where we sit back inside. So brief your passengers, record your times, you look at your circuit breakers, which are all down here, and then you would get ready to start the aircraft. So before starting, you want to make sure avionics is off. I have this key bug to the avionics, but in general, you can see up here too, you'll be seeing the same thing, is that you don't want to ever start the engine with the avionics running because that's a large surge of electricity that will be running through it. Next on the checklist is autopilot. We won't worry about that too much. If people watch this and like it, we can keep going, and we can do multi-engine. We can do different aircraft, at requests. We can do autopilot, all sorts of stuff. But we'll not get ahead of ourselves. So the throttle, 1/4 of an inch. So of course your throttle is the black knob down here. This ring, there's a ring around it. It's a friction ring. Just is how hard or easy it is to pull. So we're going to open it 1/4 of an inch, which isn't very much. And then the mixture, this red knob, will keep full lean. And on your real aircraft, the mixture is called a vernier knob. So that means you have to press a button to move it freely like you would the throttle. And the purpose of that is if you're going to descend or something and you need to idle the engine, you don't accidentally pull out the mixture, and then that would of course kill the engine. So adjustments to the mixture are usually very fine with the twisting motion. Righty-tighty, turning it right will advance the mixture a little bit. And then the propeller, the blue knob, is the same kind of vernier setup. But again, depending on how this goes, we can talk about appropriate use of the propeller as well. And of course, the 172 doesn't have a variable speed prop, so you don't have to worry about it anyway. It just says these two knobs. So throttle 1/4 of an inch, mixtures all the way lean, brakes, you can hold down the brakes on your pedals or you can set the parking brake. Looks to be set in the simulator. And then you would in real life, you would check left and right, make sure the ramp is clear and you're not going to hurt anybody. Then first thing I like to do is turn the beacon light on, because even without electricity, the beacon light is a good way to alert people that there's electricity running through the system now and the engine has the potential to start. That's what you want to signal. Then we'll turn the master switch on. So I have couple things here. So in the G1000, that will bring up this screen, which is in reversion mode. We can talk about that a little bit later. Anytime you have an alert, you definitely want to be clicking through it as well. Now, master's on, and electricity is running through the system. The beacon light is on, so if you were outside the aircraft, it would be obvious to anybody that the thing on the tail is beeping or flashing, so it could start at any moment. Okay, then so you'll see in a lot of checklists there's these auxiliary fuel things, and setting it to rich and then turning the fuel pump off for a little bit. That's rarely necessary, so we won't worry about that as much today. Most of the time, I mean, a 172 can start up without any problem. So next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get our keys out, and we're going to put them in the ignition. So what I like to do is, again, in real life there will be usually several keys for like the baggage compartment or the door, so you want to make sure you have the right one. So I'll just maybe flick it over one time to make sure I've got the right one. Then we will again look left, look right, and then we'll turn over to ignition, but we can stop and think about this for a second. So you'll notice there's right, left, both, and then start, because the magneto system is actually independent of the electric system. So every time the propeller turns, it turns in a copper coil that creates its own current that will trigger the next spark for the spark plugs. And there's two sets of magnetos, one on top of the cylinder, one on the bottom. There's a couple reasons for that. For one, it's redundancy in the system. So if once something happens to one set of spark plugs, you still have another to run the engine on. And two, it allows for more complete burning of the fuel-air mixture inside the aircraft. So what we'll do, we have it over there as we crank the throttle. Since this is not a carbureted, this is a naturally aspirated, because the model on X-Plane is a 172S. We'll advance the mixture, and again, we'll do so by holding down the button instead of just twisting it. So, you would yell clear, and there you go. And then a nice idling on a ramp is about 1,000 RPM, so we're pretty close to that, so we can leave that. And then, it would spring back to both, so you're running on both magnetos. Okay, that was great. Now your mixture is all the way rich, and so the whole purpose of mixture is to control how much fuel compared to air is making it into the engine. And the reason is, as you climb, you get higher and higher above into the atmosphere, there's less air. So that means you need less fuel, so you can lean things out. But again, that's how to do that, and what exactly that means we can talk about for a different day maybe. But for now, we can just lean the mixture a bit while we're just sitting here. And the bottom line is that too much fuel running through there won't maybe be burned all the way, and that will then cause you to foul the spark plug, which is pulled up with extra carbon. So we want to avoid that. And if you notice, when we leaned it, there was an increase in RPMs as well, because you're optimizing the fuel to air mixture when you're doing that. But again, that's a discussion for a cross country sort of scenario. And then the next thing that we'll do, going through the checklist, we'll look at oil temperature, which is on the left side of the G1000, because again, when you start the engine, both screens aren't on, so it's in reversion mode. So everything looks to be in the green. Fuel flow is at the top, and we have oil pressure in the green, oil temperature in the green, and then exhaust gas temperature, which is the heat. That's more of like a relative measurement, the heat of the exhaust exiting the cylinders, and that's another way we can lean the mixture when we're traveling in the sky. Vacuum gauge is in the green, and fuel quantity, so everything looks pretty good. Now we can turn the alternator on, turn the avionics on, and then we have this nice picture here. And then it's at this point that I like to kind of pause, and we'll just clear all these flight plans. Okay, again, that's a different data set. So the next thing that we'll do is we'll make sure we're tuning the right frequencies. So these, you can print stuff like this for free on SkyVector. I just use it, to practice approaches. So the ADIS, which is the automated terminal information system, so that's somebody makes an observation every hour. It's usually like 55 minutes past the hour, and it'll tell you the conditions of the airport. So we need that frequency in our COM2, which is 119.675, and then in our
Key West Internet.
In our COM1, we will have the ground, because ground is who you're talking to. Again, this is pretty in the weeds, but if you want to have a realistic experience, that's 121.9. So we're flying in Key West, by the way. I should have mentioned that earlier. So 121.9. Okay, and then next thing is you get out a pen and pencil. I'm not going to do that right now. And then you would click COM2 because you've loaded your ATIS frequency. So you always have like who you're talking to and the COM1, which is up here, and then you have the secondary, usually weather down here. So, and then we'll fire up the weather by pressing COM2.
Key West International Information
I'll write all this down.
1900 Zulu weather. Wind 360 at 10, visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 1500 overcast, temperature 25, dew point 22.
So
altimeter 2989. Arriving runway 09, departing runway 09.
I mean, that's fine. We won't be able
Advise
to
on initial contact. You have
weather
India.
Turned on. But anyway, so we can, but we're just going to take off anyway. Obviously, if this sky was that overcast, you would not depart vehicle. And VFR, by the way, it just means visual flight rule, so you're not flying.
Key West International Information India.
Okay, we're going to take this
1900 Zulu weather.
So what did it tell us? It told us
wind 360 at 10, visibility more than 10.
Ceiling.
Sky conditions 1500 overcast, temperature 25, dew point 22. Altimeter 2989. Arriving runway 09, departing runway 09. Advise on initial contact. You have India.
And then they're departing runway 9. So you can get rid of the ATIS by pressing that button again, which is here. And then you can twist your heading bug, which is, make sure I'm pointing to that. It's here. Twist this over to 090, which is, so pushing it centers it. Use that to your advantage. You can twist it over to 090, which is the runway that you're using. And that's more important, maybe an instrument flying that you want to make. That will help you know you're on the runway. Okay, so we have our weather. We have the altimeter set to the right setting. We have the right frequencies dialed in. We've kind of done our checklist. We could do an autopilot checklist, but that's again a lesson for discussion for a totally different day. So the next thing you would do is you would key up Key West ground.
Key West International Information India.
So you would say, good afternoon, Key West ground, Skyhawk 1720 Papa is at the south ramp with India, requesting VFR departure 090, so to the east, so runway heading. And they would say something like, good afternoon, Skyhawk 1720 Papa, taxi, runway 9er via, bad here, don't remember the taxiways exactly. So you get the idea. Be a little cowboy action. Okay, so then to taxi over to the runway, going to just, I don't know if you can see it here, let's just follow this taxiway down to the end. We'll take off speeds, and then we'll stop there. So take the parking brake off, and then what you want to do is you want to turn the taxi light on always when you're taxiing, because you want to signal to people that the aircraft's moving. Then you can give it a little bit more juice, and then you're just going to taxi over to runway. Now we're moving. Again, that's something else you do in real life. It's brake check. So as we're moving, it's fine. Okay, brake work. I was aggressive, but brake works. If you had an instructor with you, they'd drag it the brakes too, or if you instruct somebody, drag the brakes too. Okay, headed over. just, I always like to see what I'm doing, and to make it easy for the screen recorder to pick up. I can't really see what's going on. That's okay. It's more important to see everything else. So this line with the solid line and the dash, that's kind of a restricted movement line. So you need permission to cross lines like that, which we got by talking to them. All right, we'll taxi this way. Try to get in the middle here. I can't really see too well. I have to do this a little bit. See what I'm doing. Okay. And then the official kind of taxi speed is what they would call, so we must be on taxiway alpha, which makes sense. So 9 or VL. So it's like a brisk jog, I think is what the AIM actually says, which is the aeronautical information manual. We're taxiing along, staying on the center line. Obviously, we're using the rudder. So in these light aircraft, not all, but these trainers, the rudders actually have a physical linkage to the nose wheel, so that's kind of how we're steering. So we'll go all the way down to the end of the runway. As we're going, we can say clear left, clear right, in both directions to make sure nobody else is coming. Nobody else is coming. This Alpha 3 is clear, Alpha 2 is clear, Alpha 1 is clear. We could do instrument checks right now, but that's, again, discussion for possibly another time. Moving along. See, there's that kind of warning about it can be pretty aggressive this leaning on the ground because it's not taking more than a gallon and a half an hour. So we're gonna keep going. Good, careful taxiing. Staying right in the center. The blue lights on the side obviously indicate that it's the taxiway, and the white lights are for the runway. Here's taxiway Bravo, which leads on to runway 9er, and the red hold short sign for runway 9. And then there's this other saying called black square, you're there. So if you're on runway 9, you're wherever the black square is. So taxiway Bravo is runway 9, which must be this little so note out there. I should have printed a taxi diagram. We're learning. Yeah, this is too argumentative. Yeah, something like 1,000. Okay, anytime you get a yellow, check it, say airspace. Yep. Okay, next we do what's called and then turn off the taxi light. So next we do what's called a run up, which is so you can hop in your car and drive without doing a run up or anything, because if your car stops, you just drift to the side of the road. But if there's a problem with the engine, like an aircraft engine, obviously you're in a lot more trouble. So this is kind of a way of trying to catch anything before that happens. So put the brakes back on. Our fuel is on both. The fuel is on the floor. Seat up, set to both. Our trim is roughly set to takeoff, which is right there. So we can spin the trim wheel down. So or alternatively, you can use the electric trim. It's about takeoff. Center it so everybody can see it. Okay. And then we can do you put in your nav things if you're actually going to go somewhere. And then now we'll set the mixture to rich, or you can twist it in again, and then we'll set the throttle to 1800 RPM, which again is just a way to get things moving so you can catch a problem. Whenever we do changes in the throttle, especially going from 0 to full throttle, you want to do it very slowly. It should ideally take like 2 to 3 seconds. And the reason is, there we go, there's something called camshaft, which is timing the valves to open, because you need a valve for gas and air to get in, and you need a valve for the exhaust to come out. If you do that too fast, you mess up the timing and the exploitation. So again, real life, good, authentic simulator flying, you can always do very slow. Okay, anyway. So now that you're at 1800 RPM, you can check the mags. We do that by first checking the right mag. And this is what I was talking about. Now we're only running the right set of mag depots. So again, there's two in every cylinder, and they're all running on independent systems, and they're also independent of the electrical system. So what did we see? We saw about a 50 RPM drop. That's exactly what you were looking for, because obviously it's less efficient if you cut it down to one magneto when it's burning on two spark. And we'll go to both, and then we should tick back up. Great. And then we'll go to the left set. Again, dropped like 50-ish. There's rules that you can look at depending on the POH. I think it's you don't want to drop greater than 150, and you don't want a per magneto, and you also don't want a discrepancy of more than 10 to the 20. So if you notice, when we checked the right set, it was 1740, and now it's 1730. So if that difference is more than 50, then you would have what's called a mag drop, and I've had those before. And then from here, we would just ask the taxi back to where we came from. I'll go back to both. Let's change the mags. Check our gauges again. So vacuum, so fuel flow, oil temperature is great, oil temperature is great, VGT is great. Vacuum, so the vacuum system, which is pretty much just running the auxiliary gyros down there, which will be the attitude of the kit. So in case something happens to the G1000, this computer that we're running up here. And then we can check idle. Again, slowly. So it's still running, and then you might get this low vacuum initiation. Anytime you have something blinking or beeping or different color at you, hit it. I don't know why the transponder is in VFR. I'll talk about that in a second. So anytime something's yelling at you, check it. So it's idling, and then we can put her back to about 1,000, and then we can lean the mixture out. Okay. And then most checklists will say the friction lock, so you can see that down here is just a ring that will adjust how easy or difficult it is to advance and do the throttle. And the reason is, again, so when you're in cruise, like traveling somewhere, these like to back out. So that just means they will pull themselves, like the throttles will pull out, and you won't be able to. You'll lose RPMs and what happens. So if you tighten that, that'll save you the trouble. And like Piper aircraft that have an anti-throttle system, even the mixture will kind of back out. Okay, so now you've done your run up. Things have looked great, and then we can start to talk about taking off. So, and 172, unless you're doing short till soft field, and again, you can explore all those kinds of things in the future. But let's see how this goes. It's between like 0 and 10 degrees flaps, so we'll just leave the flaps alone. They're at 0, and they're indicated down here. Perfect flaps at 0. Then we can do something I like to call lights, camera, action. But so another thing to emphasize is a checklist is a checklist. It's not a to-do list. To do things that are right and you know them, and then make sure you do this. So so we set the transponder back to 1200, which is of course the VFR. So that just every aircraft on a radar, and this is Key West. So of course they have radar because there's a military base nearby. So you'll, a little squawk code will appear there, and they mean different things. So you would squawk 7700 if you're having an emergency. So 77 going to heaven. If you lose communications, you squawk 7600, so 76 radios fixed. And if you're getting hijacked there, you would squawk 7500. And on this plane, you just do that by hitting the transponder button, and then code, and then you can type in whatever you want. Just don't ever, in real life, type anything you don't mean, because they'll really light up on a radar. So again, check your enunciations. Okay, I think we got everything. And then what I like to do is a briefing for every real flight. So in the Key West area, I know this airport, there's a lot of water. So there's also a runway though. So if you're high enough, I don't know if you can see it, there's a military base there. So if you had an engine failure, they'll make it over there, or just aim for near the shore. And then brief your speeds as well. So in 172, you're going to rotate, which just means gentle back pressure on the yoke, just to relieve nose wheel, because in real life we will do something called a shimmy and it will shake on you. So pull pressure off the nose wheel, and it might lift off right there, or it might take a minute and then lift off. But the rotation speed is just where you apply a little bit of back pressure. Then you have VY and VX. So VY is the best rate of climb, and VX is the best angle of climb. And those sound probably pretty similar, but VY will get you the highest in the least amount of time, and VX will get you the highest in the least amount of distance. So why would you need that? If you have an obstacle at the end of the runway, you need to clear it quickly. If the field is very short, you might climb at VX for a little bit. It's just a way to buy you altitude really quickly. VY is just generally better. It's better. It's faster, so there's better cooling on the engine, and it's generally not necessary to climb any faster or at a higher rate than that. And VY in a 172 is 74 knots. So again, our airspeed strip is over here. Red arc is the plane can't fly in any configuration. White arc, white ribbon here is the area where you can operate the flaps, and the green arc is flying without the flaps. So what you'll immediately notice is that the green arc ends higher than or green ribbon ends higher than the white ribbon, because with flaps out you can fly a lot more slowly without stalling. Your stall speed with flaps all the way up is a little bit faster. And above this, we'll see we have a yellow zone, a yellow ribbon, which is just like a caution, where you would only really fly in very smooth air. Otherwise, you would kind of stay out of there. And then you have the red line, or the red ribbon on a G1000, which is structural integrity of the aircraft is really sure past there. So you could definitely damage something. So, really, most 172s can't get above the green arc unless you're doing like an emergency descent or something. And then your altitude is right here, vertical speed is right here, barometric pressure is right here, and this is your bug for altitude. So there's there's altitude right here, and if you spin these, it will adjust the desired altitude. The outer knob will adjust the thousands, the inner knob will adjust the hundreds. This is something that's probably worth knowing now, because it will kind of help you hold your altitude. So if we wanted to climb to 2,500, for example, that's how we would do it. Just give us, more situational awareness. So a key to safety is just situational awareness. Okay, now that we're done that, we can talk to the tower again. So we would switch frequencies to, what is it? It's 124.025. Again, this is overkill, but if you're doing like, is that called VATS and something? Then you would be doing this. Switch over to tower, and then you would dial an approach here if you wanted to, but again, that's another day. So Now with tower kind of keyed up, we would say Key West Tower, Skyhawk 172 Sierra Papa, ready for departure at Niner. That's, I think, I found most people agree is the safest language to use. Throwing out words like 172 Sierra Papa holding short of runway Niner or ready for takeoff at runway Niner, you know, it's not always the best idea to throw out like the word takeoff because you just really want to minimize confusion out there. So you can say ready at runway 9 or ready for departure at runway 9, and then there's no confusion about if you're supposed to hold short or take off or whatever, because that language hasn't even made it out there. Then they will say Skyhawk 172 Sierra Papa, clear for takeoff runway 9er, fly runway heading. Then again, so when you're talking on the radio, you've probably heard there's a lot of ways to think about like who, what, where, when, why kind of is one. So who you are, where you are, what you want, and what you know is a really common one. Just make sure you're conveying the necessary information. So for example, in the who, what, where, when, why, when we were on the ramp, we said so who we're talking to first was Key West ground, who we are, Skyhawk 172 Sierra Papa, where on the south ramp, what do you know with India, and then what do you want, VFR departure, runway 090, and then they kind of told us what to do from there. So that's just kind of radio bats and stuff, if you ever get into that. So here, so we would read their latest instruction back to them, and we would say Skyhawk 172 Sierra Papa, clear for takeoff, runway 9er, runway head. Okay, we're gonna learn two kind of stupid things, but they're really important. So we're gonna say lights, camera, action before we take off, and then, or before we pull onto the runway, and then as we're advancing the throttle, we're gonna say gauge is green, airspeed's alive. As kind of call outs, just again one final check to make sure that everything's safe and okay to complete. Okay, so we're gonna say lights. So what that means is you want the landing light on, the taxi light on, and you want the strobe light on. And you'd only turn the nav light on. I mean, you might in these weather conditions. It's pretty dark out, but sunset to sunrise when you have the nav light on. So lights, camera with transponder is squawking VFR, and action is you would visually check that your final is clear and answer extra. Lights, camera, action, so that's brake. You take the brake off, and then I'm going to have to see a little bit, and then we can start advancing onto the runway. So again, we couldn't usually cross this old short line without permission, but they gave it to us. Okay. Yeah, we see the flashing white lights, which indicate the end of the runway. Going on the runway here, and not a bad habit to get into. You can kind of roll all the way out here and then take off, or you can give yourself a second to get out here. Get your bearings. That's especially important for instrument flying, especially if you're on the old steam gauges. When you get lined up with the runway, you can just stop for a minute, and then make sure your heading is bugged more or less to the runway. Yeah, kind of off to the right, and then you can do it. So we're gonna say take off, so advance the throttle in over 2 to 3 seconds, and then immediately you'll bring the semi right away. The left turning tendencies, which we can talk about some other time. Take off, gauges are green, so check your gauges one more time. Airspeed's alive, which means registering airspeed 5, gently pull back, and we're flying. And we're looking for that 74. 74 or thereabouts. There's quite a 10 knots. Really climbing right about, and keep your hands off. Alright, and when you're past the tower, you kind of assume you're heading, but I like to do it. Stay. Probably should kind of stop there because we're going to cloud pretty soon. But probably take a minute to go over a couple things real quick. So, of course, you're heading obviously, and this bar is kind of what there's not even a ball down here, what the turn coordinator used to be. So real quick, if you see, you can kind of throw the bar on the left, it's the same thing, you just step on the wall. And then, yeah, the rest is pretty reasonable. Okay. So I think we'll stop there. Just okay, hope you found that helpful. Kind of first go at it there, but I think we could learn some interesting stuff together and explore these scenario a little more, and how to do like more realistic sensing. Yeah, of course. And see immediately right here, you'll notice if you're flying with autopilot, you have to be controlling those. Alright, well, thanks for watching. Any feedback is appreciated, and if this is well received at all, we can look into where to go from here. Level flight, some of the cruise, talk about landing, airspeeds, talk about more advanced aircraft, flying IFR, clouds like this, how you dial approach, makes your settings a lot simpler. Alright, have a good one, and get through the sky.